Hollow Knight Silksong has become one of my favorite games of all time. With the amazing artwork and visuals, outstanding score that has me floating up to the ceiling, difficult skill checks that have me going from raging to rejoicing within seconds, and an immersive story with complex themes, characters, and arcs. What's not to love? I'm not always the type to go for 100% in my games. I try to collect collectibles along my journey whenever I notice them in plain sight or see suspicious nooks and crannies to check. This can include star coins, money, loot, spells, heart pieces, masks, the works. But what usually happens when I'm playing is that if I realize I missed something along the way, I don't get the urge to backtrack and finish. Maybe a game has multiple endings, but once I finish, I'm content and close out that chapter and move on. Silksong was different for me. Now, I haven't 100%ed the game. Please don't click off. Hold on 1 second, please. This is for two distinct reasons. One, I'm at the point where I have to buy the remaining tools I'm missing, so I'm grinding rosaries, which isn't the most thrilling experience. But besides that fact, there's also reason number two, which is I just don't want the game to end. Once I 100% it, then it's over, and there's nothing left. No incentive to launch the game. Wait a minute. But how did a seemingly simple indie game have such a huge impact on me when this difficulty and genre of game is something I usually look over? I will discuss the overall plot, characters, themes, and my personal analyses and opinions. This is an official warning that spoilers will be included past this point, so here we go. Hollow Knight Silksong is the sequel to Hollow Knight, developed by Team Cherry. Both games fall into the Metroidvania category, the name being the ship name of Metroid and Castlevania. These are non-linear games where you're able to continue your exploration through progressing other areas to acquire keys, abilities, or something that will allow you to access further areas. Does this mean you could argue that Luigi's Mansion is a Metroidvania? I mean, you could only progress by gaining the elemental power-ups for your Poltergust, and you do have to do a lot of backtracking between levels of the mansion. Anyways, this is part of the beauty of this game. You never know if you'll be taking the same path as another player. For example, I ended up in a particularly dreadful area pretty early in my gameplay, where my fiance went to this area way later with better abilities. The story follows Hornet, a recurring character in Hollow Knight. After being captured by veiled bugs, she manages to escape and finds herself in the land of Farloom. She travels through the many sectors of Farloom, trying to uncover the mystery as to why she was kidnapped. Along her journey, she discovers bugs plagued by something known as the Haunting. And she learns of the Citadel, a holy sector sitting above all of Farloom and the destination for all pilgrims in Farloom. Hornet meets a lot of characters along her journey and faces a lot of trials that test her strength and abilities. In classic Metroidvania fashion, she acquires new abilities, tools, and upgrades to help make these journeys and battles slightly easier. After finally reaching the Citadel, she's met with one last judgment before being able to pass the gates, and then Hello, editing sword here, cutting in very quickly for a disclaimer. Coming up in some of my clips with the last boss fight, I am wearing a costume of a Scar Guard, my biggest op, or one of them I should say, throughout this game. So it caught me off guard when I was looking back at my clips for this. It'll probably catch you off guard, so I just wanted to clear that up. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the video. Throughout this journey, Hornet has met important characters that play larger roles in the overarching story of the game, as well as her family history. She learns more about Weavers, her spider ancestors that were originally created in Farloom by the pale being Grandmother Silk. Realizing that the haunting is due to Grandmother Silk's tendrils flowing down from the Citadel, Hornet decides to take matters into her own hands. But first, Hornet must face a few more bosses, including a second run-in with Lace, who is revealed to be Grandmother Silk's creation, fully made of silk. After defeating Lace, Hornet ascends to the cradle, where Grandmother Silk has been trapped by the weavers of the past. Hornet takes on Grandmother Silk, defeats her, and binds with her. Binding with Grandmother Silk's power turns Hornet into the new ruler of Farlum in a somber ending. Until yes, a super secret Act 3 only for the best of the best gamers to uncover. Yes, that's including me. Why would you think any differently? I can't do this! No! Damn. No, just... Nah. No! Anyways, if you decide to hold off on going straight to Grandmother Silk and complete a lot of favors and tasks from the bugs of Farlum, a man named the Caretaker will instruct Hornet on a better way to defeat Grandmother Silk without continuing the cycle of Hornet taking her place. He tells her about the Soul Snare, which will act as a trap for Grandmother Silk. Going back up to the cradle and defeating Grandmother Silk like normal, the Soul Snare triggers and opens a rift to the Void, a dangerous higher being that the Hollow Knight fans will recognize. The Void pulls in Grandmother Silk and almost snatches up Hornet too, until Lace of all people sacrifices herself to save Hornet. After coming to, Hornet finds all of Farlum practically destroyed. Not only is Farlum dealing with the tendrils from Grandmother Silk and her haunting, but both of these have been infected with the Void, which will lead to the full destruction of Farlum. This is due to Grandmother Silk trying to resist the Void in the Abyss, a land deep beneath Farlum. Using the advice of the Snail Shamans, who completely tricked us by the way, Hornet collects the hearts of mighty warriors from throughout Farlum. The shamans use the hearts to help Hornet enter her own memories to find a flower called the Everbloom, which is resistant to the Void. Hornet uses the Everbloom to reach Grandmother Silk, still holding on as long as possible for the sake of her daughter, Lace, who has been infected with the Void. After Hornet defeats Lace, Grandmother Silk uses her last bit of energy to help both Hornet and Lace escape. Hornet tries using the Everbloom again, but the flower starts to die. Just as it starts to look bleak for Hornet and Lace, the Night appears and brings them both to the surface. Now that Grandmother Silk has finally relented against the Void, her tendrils retract and Hornet has saved Farlum. It would be impossible to cover every single detail of what happens throughout this story to really do it justice, but this is just the overview. This is a very compelling story that also follows the hero's journey perfectly, but offers something unique enough to the outline that left me glued to my seat, wanting to know more about the underlying themes. What other stories was Team Cherry trying to tell? Femininity is described as qualities or attributes regarded as characteristic of women or girls. Throughout the whole of Silksong, we see strong connections to femininity, whether that's embracing more feminine traits, utilizing feminine tools, or showcasing strong female characters without sacrificing their femininity in order to express their strength. For example, we have our protagonist, Hornet. She's extremely skilled with her needle and deadly with her movement. At the same time, her outfit is a flowy cloak, no armor in sight. And she's graceful in her attacks, her dashes and jumps, almost like a dancer or acrobat. I mean, even the Drifter's cloak upgrade is reminiscent of Princess Peach floating with her dress. These attributes to Hornet do not take away from her strength, but flesh her out more as our main character. When Hornet enters her own memories for the Everbloom in Act 3, we see just how influential and important women have been to shaping her into the bug she is today. We see glimpses of her mother, Hera, also known as the Beast in Hollow Knight. Also, how cute is baby Hornet? We then see Hornet training alongside Vespa, the Hive Queen. She became Hornet's mentor after Hera became a dreamer. Vespa instructs Hornet to be faster, stronger, because one day people may come for her due to her nature. The last prominent figure she sees in her memory is the White Lady, a familiar face for Hollow Knight fans. The White Lady cared for and looked after Hornet as Hera slept. She hoped that Hornet would understand why she and the Pale King were doing what they must to create a better world. The White Lady is then the one who provides Hornet with the Everbloom flower. Besides Hornet and the role models in her life, We have many strong female characters in this game. We're introduced to Chakra, who Hornet describes as a warrior cartographer of a tribe from Farloom's edge. Her skills in battle could challenge the kingdom's best. She tells Hornet that she is also on a mission to find her master, another strong female warrior who trained her. We know just how strong Chakra is, not just by fighting her head on, but also by this addition in the Hunter's Journal. She has lived a mere fraction of my lifetime, and yet her rings prove a ferocious match. As gifted a warrior as I have ever encountered, and one I am fortunate to call a friend. She also sings a beautiful melody to let you know she's nearby, becoming a beacon of relief and hope when lost in a new area of Farloom. Dude, here she fucking is. Now, the Bell Beast is an interesting character because I originally thought she was a good boy transporting me around, and that was that. Until a shocking moment in Act 3, where Hornet goes to call on the Bell Beast and finds the monster Bell Eater instead. After a fight with some interesting fighting choices, Bell Beast jumps in and finishes Bell Eater. When I tell you the scream that I screamed at this moment, Bell Beast went from a more passive, fast travel tool to, as the name describes, a beast. But then she's a mother? For me at least, this was the first confirmation that Bell Beast is a female, not male. So not only do I have a badass sidekick taking on boss fights for me, but she did it postpartum with adorable babies in tow. A major character throughout the story is, of course, Lace, the sentient silk being created by Grandmother Silk. She's an antagonist that Hornet has to fight a total of 3 times, each fight increasing the difficulty and testing the skills you've learned along the way. Lace has a very elegant look to her, and a higher pitched voice, and a similar quick, graceful movement to Hornet. We see this juxtaposed to the strength Lace exudes with each fight, especially in the Lost Lace battle. Of course, the overarching bad guy, until the last fight of Act 3 of course. We have Grandmother Silk, the original creator of the Weavers, an all-female species from what I've seen since they call everyone in their tribe sister. She's been haunting the bugs of Farloom with her silk tendrils and inadvertently wreaks havoc on Farloom when those tendrils become infected with void. Similar to Lace, we have an elegant godlike being who is not afraid to totally massacre us. Speaking of fun fights, we see a lot of strong female bosses that Hornet has to face. Besides Lace and Grandmother Silk, we also have Widow. She is a weaver without a mask that plays music off of the silk tendrils like a harp in order to control it, haunting the town of Bellheart. After defeating Widow, Hornet binds with her to gain the Needle Inn, where she can play different melodies on her needle. We also have Sister Splinter, who Hornet describes as an imposing old insect nesting in the heights of Shellwood. After a quick search on the Hollow Knight wiki, I see she's also described as the matriarch of the Splinter tribe. She blocks the path to gain another ability, the Cling Grip, which allows Hornet to climb walls. Later in Act 3, when Hornet has to collect the hearts of past warriors, 2 of the 4 she can collect include Nihilith and Scar Singer Carmelita. Nihilith is the ancient heart of Shellwood, connected to all its living things. She is the creator of Shellwood, an area of Farloom populated with nature and foliage compared to some of the more dark and dying areas of this world. After her death, prior to the defeat by Hornet in the memory, Shellwood fell into disarray and allowed for the Splinter tribe to take over. Carmelita is described as the song queen of the Scar and their most talented warrior. This is personally one of my toughest boss fights. It took me an ungodly amount of tries, but the score kept me going. Carmelita puts Hornet's graceful movement to shame as she literally dances across the arena. She sings beautifully as she fights Hornet, only stopping when staggered. So here we have this queen of the Scars who showcases feminine traits, but described as their strongest warrior, and has the voice to unite them. Something else we see throughout the game is the act of sewing, a traditionally feminine hobby, being used in a multitude of ways. We have Hornet, who uses a needle as her weapon of choice, which is the vessel for a thread when sewing. The traditional choice of weapon in Farloom is the pin, typically used to hold fabric together before sewing. In Hornet's memory, we see her mother teaching her how to sew and how important it is. We can see this same action where Hornet sits on a bench to rest. If craftable tools were used, Hornet then sews with silk and crafts more tools using her stock of shards. Similarly to Hollow Knight, bugs act out and attack us due to outside forces. In Hollow Knight, it's due to the infection from the radiance, but in Silksong, we see another sewing reference where bugs are being haunted by the silk coming from Grandmother Silk. One of Hornet's upgrades comes from the seamstress, who was previously a pinstress like her sister. She's the one to give Hornet the drifter's cloak through sewing spines into the cloak to allow for flotation. There's also the act of binding. In-game, Hornet binds in order to obtain the power of whoever or whatever she is binding with, whether to gain a crest or a new ability. In relation to sewing, binding is finishing a seam or hem of a garment, usually by rolling or pressing, then stitching on an edging or trim. Now you could argue this is just the word they chose when Hornet uses her binding ability, because binding also refers to holding something together, or maybe like an unbreakable contract. An argument could be made there. However, I think using the word bind is strategic due to these meanings and the reference to sewing. They could have used words like absorb, consume, but none of those would work well with the theme. Silksong does a marvelous job of showcasing femininity throughout without taking away from the strength and power it can also have. Sometimes we have female characters who are written to shun femininity in order to show their power among the other male characters as a way of saying this is how she can keep up with the rest. Silksong does not fall into this trap. Our characters are graceful yet fierce. The bosses are intriguing and deadly. Typically, feminine hobbies and traits are embraced instead of hidden or looked down on. The second strong theme that I noticed is motherhood, which is described very simply as the state of being a mother. This is particularly shown through the bond between mothers and daughters, tying back into the theme of femininity. Once again, we have our main character Hornet, who is the daughter of Hera. In the Red Memory, Hera is trying to raise Hornet to overlook the whispers of the other weavers who are planning to use Hornet for their own gain. She wants Hornet to go on to live her own life, as any mother would hope for their daughter. While I've already mentioned the memories with Vespa and the White Lady, they are important to mention again in this section, as they also show the strong bonds between a mother-like mentor and a daughter. They both care for and look after Hornet after Hera becomes a dreamer. They teach her to be faster and stronger so she may choose her own future and her own fate, much like Hera. This is important for the development of Hornet as a character to understand the importance of resilience and strength that she was taught by these motherly figures. In a similar yet different way, we have Lace and Grandmother Silk. Now, Grandmother Silk is the creator of the Weaver species as a whole, which does make her the first mother for the Weavers, but for right now I will be discussing the direct mother-daughter relationship with Lace. Lace has a sort of disdain towards her creation and Grandmother Silk for doing so. She is a being of pure silk, unlike the Weavers, which had evolved from Farlids by the hands of Grandmother Silk, as we see in the first Sinner's memory. She feels as though she cannot live up to what is expected of her and compares herself to Hornet, who is a true living descendant of Weavers. This train of thought is exactly what Hera was teaching Hornet to stay away from. Forget what the others might say, or think of what you should be. Rather, carve your own path to hope for a better future. While these are the most important instances of motherhood in the game, I want to just shoot off some other integral moments that really solidify this theme in Silksong. Of course, like I mentioned before, we have Belbeast, who had become a mother in Act 3 of the game. For a character that has a role of helping the protagonist fast travel, the creators really did not have to do anything like this in developing Belbeast more. This shows me that this choice is very intentional. Belbeast finishes off a tough boss fight with Bell Eater, saving Hornet and then immediately introducing her children to her. A very interesting example as well is the Witch Crest. In order to acquire the Witch Crest, there are some wishes that Hornet has to fulfill. While roaming around Bile Water, Hornet can come across what sounds like a crying baby. If she picks it up, we see it's called a Twisted Bud. Next, Hornet has to bring the Twisted Bud to Grey Root in Shellwood. During my own playthrough, I picked up the baby, but did not give it to Grey Root until Act 3. Which meant, anytime I paused or looked at my map, all I heard was the constant crying and wailing from this baby. Oh, ew, what is that? He's crying in my ear. Grey Root will take the bud and infest Hornet with it, taking away basically all of Hornet's abilities, including healing through binding, using tools, and using silk skills. She will remain this way until the very end of the game, which gives players a different ending. unless she can get rid of the parasite through an operation. After the operation is complete, Hornet will now have access to her abilities again and have the witch crest unlocked. While Hornet is infested, against her will, she looks as though she is ill and sickly from the creature called a bud that was crying like a baby. The crest is also described as follows: whip the needle in sweeping swings, leech the life of foes through twisted roots. Again, another creative choice in the wording here, as the bud leeches off of Hornet while infecting her. It's even described as a parasite in the infestation operation wish. This is a very different lens to look at motherhood through compared to the earlier examples. We have our protagonist forcibly impregnated with a parasite that leeches off her, keeps her from being able to do her normal tasks, and has to be removed for Hornet to regain any semblance of her life before the infestation. Another example of a different viewpoint on motherhood is with Eva inside Weave Nest Atla. Is it Eva or Ava? I'm not sure, but we're gonna go with Eva for now. Eva, a character that helps with upgrading Hornet's crest, is a despised child of the Weavers, made from rune and shell. She is encased in an iron cage that sustains her, since she would die if she left. This explains why she was left behind when the Weavers fled Farloom. She shares with Hornet the curse of the Weavers, which is the near impossibility of conceiving, thus the failed attempt at creating kin in Eva. It is implied she was created in order to mimic another divine being like Grandmother Silk. This ties back into the message from Hornet's motherly figures once again: create your own future, not based on what those around you expect. This curse also showcases the weight of Hornet's existence. Daughter of a pale being and a weaver, she is rare in her own right, but even more so in her ability and training. This explains why Hornet was captured at the very beginning of the game. Grandmother Silk was looking for any weaver descendants and found a daughter that was the exception to the curse. This ties back into Lace's insecurity with Hornet at the cradle, where she feels as though her mother would prefer Hornet to her. The well-roundedness of these characters and the thoughtfulness in these storylines is incredible. And as a quick little bonus moment, the literal first boss of the game that Hornet is forced to fight is Moss Mother. It doesn't get any more blatant how integral motherhood is in the story than that. I think the most blatant theme in Silksong involves the very heavy religious symbolism. We see this strained relationship between the worshipped and the followers. It's laced, pun intended, with many references and concepts relating to religion as a whole that I think are important to the story. First, I'll start with some of the basic terms that we learn as we play the game. The word pilgrim is used to describe the bugs in Farloom that are beginning their journey or pilgrimage to the Citadel. Traditionally, a pilgrim is defined as a person who journeys to a sacred place for religious reasons. These bugs could have been called visitors, tourists, adventurers, but they were called pilgrims. This defines that their journey is not simply to reach the Citadel, but to get to a sacred place of worship. The Citadel is the religious institution that governs Farloom and the destination for the pilgrims of the kingdom. This holy place sits above all of Farloom as a beacon for pilgrims, but as we know, pilgrims are not really meant to enter. This term is used in the Bible to describe a fortress that sits above a city as defense and refuge. In Silksong, the Citadel is not only a place where Grandmother Silk and the upper class reside, but it is also a place of worship and is a symbol of hope for pilgrims. Of course, the main currency of the game, rosaries. These are used to purchase goods, pay for benches, pay for unlocking Belt Beast travel points, and are rewards for completing wishes. Peb, a merchant in Bone Bottom, says, "Rosaries, those finely carved beads of prayer. If you will only share some with me, I will trade you something fair." And the description is partly accurate to real life. They are a religious exercise in which prayers are recited and counted on a string of beads. In-game, the rosaries can also be put on a string in order to prevent losing them. We also very often hear the word sin throughout the game. This word has become interchangeable with crime, as we have bugs that have been locked away for sins ranging from as small as infirmity or being sick, all the way to apostasy, or abandoning your religious beliefs. The slab is the prison in which sinners are held in order to reach absolution, but this only occurs through death of the sinner. A prominent figure Hornet meets goes by the name of First Sinner, who was indeed locked away for apostasy. You learn in her flashback how the Weavers came to be, and the realization that Grandmother Silk has lied to them about being divine creatures. Based on this knowledge, it's safe to assume this is what led to her becoming the first sinner, questioning Grandmother Silk. This highlights toxic religious belief that those who question the higher being are to be punished, thus deepening the harmful relationship between the higher being and other believers. Another important boss fight that fits into this theme is with the Last Judge. Hornet describes the Last Judge as the final arbiter of the blasted steps, tasked to ensure only the sinless ever step beyond the gate. The huge judge likely stood through countless generations, never defeated, never wavering in their charge. After Hornet reaches the Grand Gate before the Citadel, the Last Judge, a larger version of the Judge enemy, jumps in to kill any pilgrims that do not meet the requirement for entering, aka being sinless. When looking on the wiki page, I noticed this piece of trivia. The Last Judge wields a large thurible, a metal vessel for burning incense swung on a chain. They are often used in religious ceremonies, which may relate to her task of guarding the citadel from the sinful. The Last Judge is a larger version of the regular judges that patrol the blasted steps. The judges are tasked with, judging pilgrims who intend to enter the citadel. Similar to the Last Judge, they pass judgment by killing the sinful. Judges are born as squirms who are taught from birth their purpose of serving the citadel. In the dark cave where they are held, Hornet can find a lore tablet that reads, "Bug born of Farloom, you have been chosen. May our citadel's holy gilding harden your soft shell. Stand eternal as our arbiter, that no bug bearing sin shall step within our sacred halls." As we now know, the severity of the sin does not matter. These bugs are groomed from birth to strike down any pilgrim that passes if they do not meet the citadel's expectations of a sinless bug. And it's easy to assume that no one has passed the Grand Gate until Hornet absolutely destroyed the Last Judge, thus ending the religious ceremony and cycle of judgment. The last term is something that I personally think has an interesting use, and that is the word caste. In-game, caste is used to describe the hierarchy of the bugs within the Citadel, such as the conductors, the vault keepers, architects, chorus, and so on. Outside the game, a caste is described as a fixed social group into which an individual is born within a particular system of social stratification. This essentially means that there's a hierarchy of classes, and where you are born into is where you stay until you die, known as the caste system. The caste you were born into would affect your social status, your wealth, job, marriage prospects, and so on. In traditional Hinduism, the caste you were born into was a result of your karma or your actions in your previous life. We see an example of this with the flies who work in the slab. We learn from the old penitent that the flies, which he also calls a caste, had committed a sin so long ago that no one remembers, but their whole species is forced to repay this by working in the slab for eternity. Speaking of the old penitent, his dialogue really helps to highlight that toxic relationship that I laid out before. What I said about the flies just now was paraphrasing, but here is his full line. They too are penitents. In a past age, that caste committed their own sacrilege against the Citadel, a sin long forgotten but so grave that their offspring and the offspring of their offspring carry the guilt with them still. To serve here is their only hope of absolution. He also says this to Hornet when she asks if he's being held prisoner. Prisoner? I understand you not. There is no prison here. This is a holy place of forgiveness. Please, speak with reverence. And this when Hornet offers to free him. You are asking me to leave this place? What a strange, fearful thought. Such a sin would never... No. By the grace of the Citadel, I am here as a penitent. Here I can hide from the shame of my sins until they are withered away by time. Leave this place? Please, strike me down dead before you speak such blasphemy again. When asked what sin he committed, he says, "My sin? A grave transgression, the cause of much pain for many. But speak of a sin is to invite its return. I will say no more." Think about some of these specific word choices. Carry the guilt. Only hope of absolution. This is a holy place? By the grace of the Citadel? He sounds like he drank way too much of the Grandmother Silk Kool-Aid. Seriously though, this is sad. He expresses gratitude to be living out this sentence that the Citadel arranged. He's in denial of the place he's in, saying it's not a prison, when there are cells everywhere. He won't even talk about the sin he committed because he fears to even speak it into existence. This disturbing relationship with religion keeps the underlings loyal, faithful, and easy to manipulate, almost like a cult. This is how the Citadel has been able to be the governing body of Farlem for so long. When Hornet talks to the caretaker to trigger Act 3, she tells him that while part of her could see herself taking Grandmother Silk's place, she wants to help Farlem be rid of this system and start fresh. By the end of Act 3, the system has been dismantled and Grandmother Silk has been consumed by the void. Hornet has completed her mission and freed the people of Farlem. One of the last things I would like to talk about is the difficulty of the game. I was having a rough time, but also a fun time. I don't typically play Metroidvanias or deal with a difficulty like this. Seeing boss fights that take 2 masks per hit, fumbling at the last leg of a fight just to die and have to start over, and spending hours on a fight that may not result in a reward. However, the joy I felt, the dopamine that flooded my brain when I saw the last hit resulting in a slow motion scene of the boss collapsing to their death, the excited screams and insults I would throw at their corpses. Nothing made me feel more alive and rewarded. Yeah, I'm not a pro gamer, and Beastfly whooped my ass for 3 hours. Yes, you heard me right. Carmelita resulted in frustrated tears while I plotted her assassination, but the adrenaline rush of defeating what seemed like the undefeatable can never be matched. Games with disgustingly hard bosses like Beastfly, Carmelita, Terranort. Oh, wrong franchise. Will always frustrate me and have me questioning how on earth it's possible. But they are always the most rewarding. I get to look back at the beginning where I could barely get my movement down, or look at how passive I was in past fights like Moss Mother and Bell Beast, and see where I got to with my upgrades, tools, and abilities. That dead body that I yelled obscenities at is proof of my progress and my new skills being put to the test. Yes, I'm sure some of you watching can say you one-tried some of these bosses I mentioned, and I'm very happy for you. I wish that could be me. You might have even laughed at hearing me say how long some of these fights took. But no one can say anything to me when I'm riding the high of beating a boss fight that has taken my heart and soul. So if anyone was feeling apprehensive about playing because you heard it was hard, well, it's true. It is. But if I can do it, so can you. Silksong is in my top 3 games of all time, and the difficulty actually adds to that for me, along with the underlying themes and messages. I highly recommend this game to any and everyone, and if you have played it, I hope my commentary was able to provide a new lens of appreciation for it. Thanks so much for watching and listening to me ramble about a game I love. I want to continue doing more retrospectives and analyses of games that I've played, so I really hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see me playing the games live or were wondering where some of these clips came from, then you can find me on Twitch. The link will be in the description. I'd love to see you there. Thank you again so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.